name is Lamar Tyler, creator of Traffic, Sales, and Profit, the most amazing community in the world for Black entrepreneurs.
My name is Freddie Taylor. I'm the CEO and founder of Urban Intellectuals. We make it fun and easy to learn Black history.
And welcome to another episode of Black Business Icons. We focus on the most instrumental and amazing entrepreneurs in Black history. And today, we got one for them today, Freddie.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
But I hope your person is good. Y'all, listen.
Listen, I hope you got somebody. I got a visionary for you.
So every episode, we each break down one of our favorite entrepreneurs in Black history so that we can make sure that everybody in our community knows their names and knows what they went through, knows what they achieved. But what I'm gonna tell you though, it's gonna be hard for you to match who I got.
I don't know.
What you talking about today?
I don't know. I got something pretty special for you. You know, we're always talking about, you hear about Black Wall Street all the time, right?
True.
Like everyone is now familiar with Black Wall Street. I got an interesting story about that. I'll share that in a moment. But I have a young man by the name of O.W. Gurley that you may not have heard of, but I think it's important that we share his story.
Okay, I want to hear about that because I know some of the story, but I know you got more. And Black Wall Street is on the lips, right? The tip of everybody's tongue. I want to talk about one of the first. What if I talked about the first Black person to have $1 billion business? Mr. Baltimore, Reginald F. Lewis. Can we get into it today?
I think we can get into it today.
All right.
I think I might got you on this
All
episode,
right, well,
even though $1 billion is a pretty impressive.
All right, so let's talk about this Black Wall Street deal.
Okay, so Black Wall Street, everyone's familiar in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Archer, Green, Archer, Pine, you know, the Gap Band, right? The Gap Band actually comes from that. That's a pretty interesting little nugget. But Black Wall Street actually comes from a gentleman by the name of O.W. Gurley. His first name is Ottawa. He was born December 25th, 1868. Think about that. I like to frame it in reference of time because 1868, just a few years removed from slavery, from being enslaved, I should say. This gentleman grew up to build what we know today as Black Wall Street. And how it happened, he was born in Huntsville, Alabama, right? And he knew that he wasn't gonna be having as much opportunity in the South as he would elsewhere. So in 1893, at the tender age of 25, he took part in the Great Oklahoma Land Rush. The Land Rush was an opportunity for citizens to run out to Oklahoma and literally drop a stake in the ground and claim the land that they were in.
I know somebody watches like, man, when they gonna do that again?
The days might have been gone,
Exactly.
That sale. But what's interesting about that story is him and his wife at the time, they traversed 50 miles across Oklahoma to put this stake in the land, and it eventually became Perry, Oklahoma, right? So a African-American enclave where people were escaping the oppression of the South and looking for opportunity. So he set up a general store there and was making a decent living. By the time the early 1900s came, there was oil discovered in Tulsa and in that area. And he said, this is an opportunity. Let me get on out here and take part in this oil boom. So he sells his store in 1905, there we go. And then he moves to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he gets this, 40 acres of land. And I like to emphasize 40 acres because we were promised 40 acres and a mule, but he had to buy his 40 acres. I thought that was a really interesting tidbit.
Because sometimes we might need to just go get what we need to get and stop waiting for somebody to give it to us.
Clearly,
is that what you're getting at, Mr.
That's
Taylor?
what I'm getting at. Clearly,
I want to make sure I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, you definitely picking it up because nobody's coming to save us. We're going to have to save ourselves. So rather than complain about it or cry and whine like we tend to do in our generation, he just saw an opportunity and went for it. But this is where I'm going with the visionary. He had a vision in his mind when he moved from Perry, Oklahoma to Tulsa, and he purchased that 40 acres. He wanted to start an African-American enclave. This was deliberate, it was intentional, and it was really a brilliant strategy at the time. So we know about his rooming house, so that was like his first building that he erected on Greenwood, right, which is the famous street in Black Wall Street. But then he went on to create a grocery store. Man, it just started to unfold from there. From the grocery store, he knew that people were coming into the city, so he had an opportunity to eat, and then they had places to live. He would continue to expand. Other entrepreneurs came into the area. He parceled off the land of 40 acres in order to create this enclave, right? So he literally mapped out the city that became known as Black Wall Street, which is what Booker T. Washington dubbed it actually Negro Wall Street. And then over the years, it evolved to Black Wall
We
Street.
made it more friendly.
We made yeah,
Softer, gentler Negro Wall Street has become Black Wall Street, right?
Yeah.
Almost African American Wall Street.
Yeah, maybe at some point, right? Our names tends to change. But I just thought that story is really powerful because it laid the foundation for a lot of what we talk about today. Everybody's all gung-ho over Black Wall Street. We need to support one another and build with one another, which this is what he was all about, right? We needed to circulate that dollar amongst ourselves. The same things that we need today, which is interesting to me in all of our discussions during this show, centered around people understanding the power of the black dollar and circulating it in and amongst the community. But O.W. Gurley is really the foundation under the Black Wall Street that we all talk about, but he had a vision, he had a dream, and he went for it. Right, I think those are the types of things that we should be inspired by and can be inspired by.
And that's good because as you talk about that, it reminds me of a few things. For one, Oklahoma, many people may not know this, but was home to multiple Black-owned, Black supportive towns where they built towns. Like you said, they got a hold of land and said, hey, you know what? We're going to make these safe spaces for Black people, not just to live, but to flourish. To have companies, to have businesses, to have farms or land or whatever it may be and live in peace. But what it also makes me think about when people nowadays talk about Black Wall Street so much, I feel like what we don't know as a community is that there were Black Wall Streets literally all over this country. And what's crazy, and it may not be crazy because it probably is by design, many of those Black Wall Streets succumbed to the same fate. Being burned down, right? Being rioted down, being shot. Like so many of them end with massacres. And if it wasn't a physical massacre, it was an economic massacre. Where if you look at many of today's interstates,
there you go.
That I-95, right? 85, 70, I-20, they are running right through the middle and right through the hearts of thriving communities. Even right now, we're shooting in the Apex Museum on historic Auburn Avenue in Atlanta.
Beautiful.
You know, one point W.E.B. Du Bois called us the richest Negro street in the world. But guess what's just a few blocks down? Interstate I-20, right literally through the middle of Auburn Avenue. I mean, like every time we talk about Black Wall Street, the importance and significance of it, like the founding of it, the foundation, the people behind it as we talked about, but also looking at the demise of these communities and what happened and how can we make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, you really nailed it because if it wasn't a physical massacre, right, it was an economic massacre. And really that interstate, that's how they really devastated us throughout the country, right? To Detroit, Chicago, D.C., Baltimore.
Overtown down in Miami.
Miami,
exactly.
all over the country we had these types of economic centers, mainly because we had to.
Yes, that
right?
part.
The segregationists or the segregation in the country forced us to bring our dollar together, but it really showed the power of the black dollar and the importance of it because we were hiring ourselves. We were feeding the systems in our communities that needed. We were building our own schools, building our hospitals. Like we were really taking care of ourselves. And now, we long for that again, but for some reason, we won't commune and bring our dollars together again. Like that's really what I'm looking for. That's why I'm excited about this show. And really everything that you're doing, right? You're bringing back the entrepreneurial renaissance that's always been in our community, right? So this is wonderful.
I appreciate that. But what I appreciate more is what I'm about to do to you when I drop this next name on you. Because this don't try to warm me up. I feel like you trying to
I threw a little butter on you
right, you're trying to butter me up. Don't think I forgot.
Yeah.
Because that Gurley story was amazing. It was phenomenal, right? Icon in the time, like definitely a black business icon.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about another one. I want to talk about Baltimore's biggest and finest, Mr. Reginald F. Lewis. Mr. Washington White Guys have all the fun.
Yes.
One of the greatest, let's stop there for a second. If you have not read that book, you need to go out and get it right now today. Me and you often talk about black entrepreneurs, we're doing things the slow way a lot of times, trying to build it up brick by brick, piece by piece and trying to get to where we are. But Reginald F. Lewis came and built it bigger than anybody had ever done it before and in a different fashion. And he watched what they were doing in the white community, how were they growing through mergers and acquisitions, and he did it himself. And at one time was called the most influential black man in business in this country. But what I love is that he had roots like many of us, right? Came from a working class family in Baltimore, Maryland. I went to Dunbar High School. I lived in Baltimore for a couple years.
Okay.
Like people in Baltimore know Dunbar, right? So he went to Dunbar High School, went to Virginia State. Shout out to the HBCUs, right? If you're watching and you went to an HBCU, if you went to Virginia State, shout out to you. Went to Virginia State. 3 sports, right? I mean, football, track, I believe, basketball. Did all the things a lot of people do, but then had an opportunity to go to Harvard during the summer, and impressed them so much of the summer program at Harvard, they actually invited him back to law school and became the only person ever to get admitted to Harvard Law School without actually applying.
I think they had a special program that particular summer.
Yep.
And they were only taking 3 or 4 from each HBCU, but he wasn't even on the agenda.
On the list to be one of 3 or 4.
To be considered. Yeah. But I think this is the power of relationships, right? So he went to his favorite teacher, who he had a great relationship with. He wrote an excellent letter of recommendation, but he even said, listen, I don't want the bland, he's a great student and that type of conversation, but he really had built a strong relationship with this particular teacher, and the admissions board was floored, and like I said, he wasn't even up for consideration, so he was floored. But I just like the tenacity, the not give up. He had a dream, he had a goal, he saw an opportunity, and he just went for it, like no excuses, right? Yep. So that's always stuck out to me. When he was building his law practice, right, and so he was closing a lot of these mergers and acquisitions, and he thought to himself, this is great, I'm making decent money, I'm making really good money actually, but I need to get to the other side of the table. I need to get to that ownership side.
Different level of money.
A different level of money, yeah.
I love that about him, just being able to see, because sometimes we're all in situations, but are we seeing and taking advantage of those situations and opportunities again? I feel like during this series, we're gonna be talking about opportunities a lot, because all these people were faced with opportunities and they took them and they maximized them. Yeah. So he has the first black law firm on Wall Street. Like I said, he wants to get to the other side of the table. Opens up his own private equity firm. And what I love about it, like that first big deal he did, McCall Pattern Company, right? Everybody thought that this company was in decline, that sewing was no longer in vogue and it was slowing down. But he said, here's a company that has money on the books. Here's a company that has some inefficiencies that we can solve, right? We can get rid of and do some things with some of the real estate. And like what I want people to really understand and to get, this was a $24 million deal he did with only $1 million of his own money. And they said the $1 million wasn't even all he, like, that was like $1 million he got from friends and family and collected. Yeah. So that's for people out there that are thinking, somebody's watching this that has tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like literally again, right, your net worth is your network. So he went to his network, pulled together $1 million, borrowed 23 million more, and was able to close and secure that deal. But the amazing part, right, he does that in 1984. Just a few years later, when he exits and gets a 90-to-1 return on his money. So the $1 million he put up, like literally a 90-to-1 return on the money he put up. I take that all day, Freddie.
All day and night. Let's get some of that. Which I love the conversations that we recently had in Anguilla, right, about mergers and acquisitions, really, because it's a mindset shift, right?
Totally.
Like, because we're thinking you got to build your business, you got to build it brick by brick, hard work each and every day, and he's showing you that you can skip the line, right? Like it's literally possible if you have a vision. And some gall, right? You got to be able to go for it.
And that's it. It's that part you said. People always say, well, Lamar, what's the quickest way to get to $1 million business? I say, well, to buy $1 million business. Because you literally can do one transaction and be there instantly. But he saw that and bought, McCall Pattern Company, exited that, and then parlayed that investment, because now he has like real wealth and real money, that he then, invested into a bigger deal, which was a lot of moving parts into the deal. That's why I say, everybody, you got to read the book. Watch the White Guys Have All the Fun, where it kind of talks about the structure and breakdown, piece by piece of what he did. But he was able to then exit the first deal, go into the Beatrice Foods.
But before you get to Beatrice,
It's a lot to unwrap in the story.
You came with a superstar here. But before you get there, I think, again, here go another mindset shift. You're thinking that you got to have $1 million in order to buy $1 million company, but the terms mean everything, right? Like, how are you going to purchase it? Is it all cash? It doesn't have to be that. Like, seller financing is the thing, right? And I come from the real estate world, so that's a very familiar term in real estate. Seller finance, the owner's going to seller finance and take the note itself. but you can do this with businesses as well, right? So it's all in how you structure the deal to make sure that it makes sense. I'm sounding like an old vet, but we plan to move into that space. But it's just really a great story, right? An inspirational story that he gives. So you gotta read the book. Watch the White Guys Have All the Fun. That's another plug.
So he goes out of a lot went into it, right? But he takes ownership of Beatrice, right? International food company, chains and brands all across Europe. But at the same time, what I love is even when he did that deal, he was actually working a deal to offset assets and make money to help close the deal. I mean, like, it's a deal inside of a deal, right?
Yeah.
So to actually make money and offload some things to actually help him get what he needed in order to be successful. So he acquires that for over $900 million. And in 1987 becomes the first black man with a $1 billion company, as you know, Beatrice, or TLC Beatrice then, once he does the actual acquisition of it, does over $1 billion in revenue for that 1987 year. This dude was an astute businessman that knew how to come in, turn the company around, and make it more profitable, and then was able to grow that to over 2 million, excuse me, I said million now. let me around them little M's.
Yeah.
A $2 billion+ company. Landing him on the Forbes 400 list, right? Of the 400 richest people in America. To have a black person on that list is powerful. Yeah. And we're talking in early days where there are not a lot of black people that have been on that list before.
Yeah, we're talking 80s, early 90s. I mean, it's mind-boggling today to acquire that type of wealth. So back then, I mean, nobody had it. There was no Kanye's or Jay-Z's running around, right? This was the rock star,
and when he hit that list, they were estimating at that point. This was in the 90s, right? At that point, he had a net worth of $400 million. Now, the most tragic part I think about Reginald F. Lewis was that he succumbed and died to brain cancer at only 50 years old.
50. Yes.
So to accomplish what he had accomplished before the age of 50, what would have happened if only he had more time? But, you know, at the same time, right, I think about that, but I also think about the fact, are we doing what we need to do with the time that we have? Because you never know how much time you actually have. Right. So I love the things that he did where a lot of people say, well, I got to do, you know, these 2 things and these 3 things and these 4 things. He just went for the top right off the break.
He just swung for the gate and went for it. But he was clearly very astute and very insightful, but a very powerful figure and inspirational at best. But I got to tell this story real quick.
Come on with it.
Man, so in 1999, I started to get my MBA, right? That's going to be a joke for another episode. But in 2000, I'm graduating. It's our capstone course, right? And I went to Southern Illinois University. It was less than 10 African Americans in the MBA program.
Out of how many? How many people in the program total?
Oh, man, that's a good question. It had to be at least 500.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty big school.
I thought maybe like 100,
yeah,
500 people.
Yeah, it's a pretty big
only like 10 black folks.
10 black folks, man. I might be stretching to 10. One was my wife, and 2 others were my frat brothers, right? Like, so you're a small community inside of this, right? But we're going through this case, and I'm just marveled at it. It's like, wow. So we graduate, it was great. And then a couple of years later, about 2002, 2003, I pick up Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? And I start reading this book. And it turns out Reginald F. Lewis is black. Not one time during this program did they mention that this brother was a black man at all. That would have been so powerful for us inside of that classroom, because you know how they always turn and look at you when it's slavery time, right? But this is an opportunity to really inspire the black and African American people in the school, and they really dropped the ball there. I'm gonna write me a vicious.
You need to write a scathing letter.
A scathing letter.
But you know, that's good. I think, again, that's the importance of this show. So as y'all are watching this show, we need you to not only watch it, but we need you to let other people know to watch it. Sit down with your kids and watch this in a family environment, because we need to equip, like hopefully once we put the show out there and people watch it, there'll be someone that's seen this show or this episode, and when they run this down at their university and there's not a lot of black people in the room, they'll raise their hand. Say, Professor, I'd like to share a story.
I'd like to share a story.
Something you guys may not have known about this deal, right? It was the first deal done by an African American at this scale, right? This international buyout. Yeah. It was the first deal, like I said, that landed an African American to be at the head of $1 billion. Like so many other nuggets and facts that were missed because they didn't share that little piece of context.
Yeah, very, very important piece to get the history, to be inspired by these visionaries that we talked about today, right? By O.W. Gurley and by Reginald F. Lewis. There's a bigger opportunity, a bigger picture out there. So hopefully many of you are inspired by the information that we're sharing during the Black Business Icon Show.
We need the next Freddie getting his MBA in that classroom to know exactly what they try not to teach you when they teach you.
Exactly.
My last thing on Reginald F. Lewis was his legacy. Because if you want to learn more about him, there's an amazing museum in Baltimore, the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, African American History in Baltimore. I've been to it. It is phenomenal. Actually, connected as part of Smithsonian. Amazing facility. But to go and learn more about him, to dig in more about him. And what I love is that even in the short time he had on Earth, once he became wealthy, once he started making deals, he still gave back. $1 million unsolicited to Howard University. And then to his alma mater at Harvard, $3 million donation. They've actually named the International Law Studies program after him and has a building on campus with a black man's name on it.
Get out of here.
At Harvard University.
At Harvard.
We everywhere.
We everywhere. We everywhere. I love it.
So this is what we need. We need for you to take the information that we shared, use this as a starting point so that you can get a hold of it, but then learn more about these people and then share more about them with people in your local communities. Hey, this is Lamar Tyler again from Traffic Sales and Profit.
Freddie Taylor with Urban Intellectuals.
And we'll see you in the next episode of Black Business Icons.
The Convo, your home for conversations on Black entrepreneurship and wealth, available on your favorite platforms.